Could Donald Trump's return to the White House lead to the unraveling of the United States and maybe even impact global stability? It sounds dramatic, but history has shown that empires and superpowers often fall from within. Today, we'll explore the risks a Trump victory in 2024 could pose to America's future, democracy, and even the global order as we know it. Buckle up, because this might be one of the most intense what-ifs out there. To understand why another Trump victory could be so destabilizing, we need to consider the context. Since his first term, Trump has pushed a populist, America First agenda that's reshaped U.S. politics. His 2016 election exposed deep divisions socially, economically, and politically that run across the country. And now, in 2024, these divisions have only grown sharper. Trump continues to reject the results of the 2020 election, claiming widespread voter fraud despite evidence to the contrary. Many Americans are disillusioned with political institutions, and trust in the government and media is at historic lows. If Trump wins again, one immediate risk is a surge in social unrest. The January 6th Capitol riot is a powerful example of how polarized and volatile the U.S. political landscape has become. Trump's base remains fiercely loyal, and his critics view him as a threat to democracy itself. A second Trump term could ignite even greater tensions between these two groups, leading to protests, political violence, or even clashes in the streets. Consider this: after the last election, only around 30% of Americans fully accepted the results as legitimate. With a Trump victory, it's likely we'll see a replay of that distrust on an even larger scale, regardless of how the votes actually fall. In this atmosphere of skepticism, a Trump victory could inspire discontent across the political spectrum, making it nearly impossible for any leader to unify the country. Beyond social unrest, another major risk lies in the potential weakening of U.S. democratic institutions. Trump's first term saw unprecedented challenges to these institutions, from the judiciary to the Department of Justice. Trump often took actions that blurred the lines between political power and personal gain, including pressuring election officials to change results and attacking judges who ruled against him. A second term could accelerate these trends. Trump could move to replace officials who might disagree with him, effectively creating a government where loyalty to him overrides loyalty to the Constitution. Checks and balances that keep U.S. democracy functioning could be at risk. This is how democratic backsliding often begins, with leaders bending rules to consolidate power and protect their own interests. If Trump's policies were to lead to an economic downturn or trade instability, the consequences could go beyond American borders. For instance, in his first term, Trump's trade policies, especially with China, caused a lot of turbulence. With international alliances strained, a second term could mean the end of multilateral agreements like NATO or even critical economic partnerships. Imagine an America that pulls out of NATO, leaving Europe more vulnerable or weakening trade relations with China, risking a global recession. In a world so interconnected, political changes in the U.S. ripple worldwide. And under Trump's leadership, these policies could lead to international isolation or an unstable global economy. By the way, I also want to remind you that Trump intends to end the war in Ukraine as soon as possible by forcing Russia and Ukraine to sign an agreement to resolve the conflict. It would seem, what's wrong with this? The problem is that there have already been attempts to negotiate, but they did not lead to any result. Russia demands that Ukraine fulfill many points, for example, confirmation of neutral status, that is, Ukraine will not be able to join NATO, and demilitarization of the country. In other words, in the event of another war, Ukraine will not have the opportunity to fight for the independence of its country. Also, Ukraine will most likely be obliged to give up its territories to Russia, which Russia has been trying to conquer with all its efforts for a couple of years now, while Russia itself, at most, undertakes to promise not to attack Ukraine. Russia has already broken such a promise once, so it will be prevented from breaking it again. And in the end, if in 2014 the West had reacted much more harshly to the annexation of Crimea, then Putin would simply have been afraid to unleash a full-scale conflict. If Ukraine still has to give up its territories, then for Putin this will serve as a signal that he can continue to conquer territories, although he will get them at the cost of hundreds of thousands of victims, but nevertheless, he will achieve his goal. In short, this whole supposed settlement agreement will in fact only further fuel Putin's confidence that he can get away with anything, which in turn will clearly lead to some other conflict, for example in the Baltic. By the way, I recently released a video on my channel dedicated to the importance of Ukraine for Europe, and what will happen if Ukraine loses. Be sure to watch this video. Lastly, a second Trump presidency could redefine what it means to be American, and not necessarily in a unifying way. Trump's approach to issues like immigration, race relations, and law enforcement has highlighted tensions between different visions of America. America has long prided itself as a land of opportunity and freedom, but that image is at risk. As these tensions build, we might see an us versus them mindset solidifying further in communities across the country, impacting the very social fabric of America. It's possible that if Trump's policies continue to divide rather than unite, the vision of America as a melting pot could face unprecedented challenges. A collapse of American unity wouldn't just impact the United States. As the world's largest economy and a global power, America's stability affects us all. If the US enters a period of intense political turmoil, other countries could take advantage of the power vacuum, and we could see new conflicts or economic crises arising in unexpected places. Allies who once relied on the US for leadership and security might look elsewhere, possibly shifting global alliances. This kind of change could redefine international relations as we know them. A significant subplot to a potential Trump victory is the recent scandal involving J.D. Vance and the United Kingdom. Vance, a staunch Trump ally and influential political figure, has come under fire for allegedly making derogatory remarks in comments that UK leaders called deeply inappropriate regarding American foreign policy in the UK. For Trump and his allies, this represents a stark deviation from traditional diplomacy with a close ally, and for many it's yet another example of how quickly things could shift with another Trump administration. Critics argue that incidents like this scandal could cause lasting damage to the special relationship between the US and the UK. Traditionally, the UK has been one of America's closest allies, often serving as a bridge between the US and Europe. But if Trump returns to power, he could empower allies like Vance, whose political tactics and rhetoric stray from conventional diplomacy. Some experts warn that such approaches could lead to a cooling of relations with key allies, possibly isolating the US in the long run. In essence, the Trump camp may have already strained relations with one of America's closest allies even before securing a victory. If this is happening now, the question becomes, what might happen once Trump and his administration actually hold power? So, could a Trump victory actually lead to the collapse of the United States? While we may not have a definitive answer, it's clear that another Trump term could accelerate existing divides and bring new challenges, both at home and globally. But here's the real takeaway: America's future, for better or worse, isn't in the hands of any one person. It's up to its people, those who vote, protest, and demand accountability from their leaders, to shape what comes next. What do you think? Is a Trump presidency truly capable of destabilizing the US, or are these fears overblown? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Make sure to like and subscribe if you found this breakdown useful, and I'll see you in the next video.